And on that just absolute limp failure.
You're watching the Democratic debate right here on CBS.
And thanks, but no thanks, CBS.
Yeah.
My motto is, I am going to do things that are good.
All right, so let's do a 10-minute wrap up here of the debate. Nomi, do you want to
give a
start?
shout out to Harvey Weinstein, who was arrested, who was sentenced yesterday. He was a fine film producer. A lot of our people in that industry. Thank you.
Nomi, what was your sense of the debate?
Not Bernie's best debate. Sorry, guys. In terms of performance, it's not necessarily his fault. There wasn't a lot of airtime, but that was the strategy. That was Pete's strategy, was just to interrupt, not let Bernie, trigger Bernie, provoke him in any way and form. I think that Klobuchar was, if you notice, Klobuchar didn't go head to head with Pete at this point. They both realized that they're not in this game anymore, and they're there for other reasons. The reasons probably they got into the race in the beginning, whether it was to challenge Medicare for all or to disrupt the Iowa caucus or New Hampshire or, whatever the reason is. I think Biden was better than normal, which is not a big, I think he was for this audience. I think so. He was. Listen, at the end of the day, Bernie stuck to his talking points. I actually think the AIPAC stuff is going to, it's not going to play well for the South Carolina audience. This is a Jesse Jackson crowd, right? Jesse Jackson was the first presidential candidate and Democrat, frankly, to ever bring Palestine to the platform. With Jim Zogby, who is a surrogate for Bernie Sanders and was the chair of the Sanders Institute. That's a real thing. We forget that older black Democrats who are a major base in the South Carolina primary were Jacksonite. I think Clyburn might have been too. I'm not sure. We have to fact check that.
Didn't he win South Carolina?
Yeah.
Jesse Jackson?
I think he did.
Which time? First or second?
I think in '88 he won it. And that was when Bill Clinton in 2008 was just like, yeah, Barack Obama won it. So did Jesse Jackson.
Right.
That's a black state. Anyways, good for you.
Right.
Good black people. I think that you're totally right about that. And in terms, and I thought that was striking because that crowd was a very anti-Bernie crowd, and he got a very big applause line on AIPAC. And then, look, Florida to me is a state, Bernie's not going to win that in the primary, and I actually don't think any Democrat will win that in the general. My read is that Florida seems like it's pretty off the table. So that being said, I still thought Bloomberg would be ready to hit Bernie with some very base, 70-year-old Jewish, how could you? That's terrorism. He didn't even seem prepared. I thought they had been choreographing. Yeah. I think the problem with Bloomberg, honestly, is that he has so many people working for him and they're doing so much nonsense over social media that it isn't even synchronized with what he's prepared to say on stage, apparently. Because they had done that earlier today. Mike's going to AIPAC and Mike's doing it. And I was totally ready for, you're siding with Hamas or some other nonsense. He didn't even have that. So anyways, I think big picture, I think Bernie got better towards the end. I think he was a little thrown off by the booing until actually he found out a way to, when he did the one where he went, really?
Right.
That was when I think he figured out how to handle it. But I think he was really thrown in the beginning. But I don't know. To me, it's there's no exchange where Bernie got pummeled. It wasn't great, but there's no
The one thing about Bloomberg, though, and I'll shut up after this. I think that Bloomberg is an arrogant politician. Just as Hillary Clinton was confused by her advisors, many politicians or executives don't listen to they bring their advisors in the room and they don't listen. I know for a fact many of Michael Bloomberg's advisors did not tell him to say some of those things. It would be ridiculous for their careers.
I bet, too, that they got into the room and went over the whole list of liabilities that they thought that Warren was going to go at them. And that's the thing that they focused on. Yeah. And I think he was surprised. She went at him hard at one point, but then basically, and I think he had that one, I am convinced it's a prepared line. Some people on Twitter think that it was done to cut another ad. But I think that is the classic consultant sort of strategy and tactic. Go up, say something self-effacing to make it seem like you're not stung from that last performance when he went up and said that.
It didn't sound self-effacing.
Well,
that was why
the
it was
point
a failure.
is that I don't know that there's any context in when he could deliver it. But to deliver it 40 minutes into the debate and wedge it in just because you happen to have the floor on a completely different question.
He had it right across.
Well, and by the way, and also after they got called out.
Well, the problem is that it's supposed to come off like it's casual.
Yeah.
Right.
But when you say, wait a second, stop, I'm in the middle of a question, I don't know what it was about. Like, it was something that was sort of heavy.
It was like a real question.
And he says, now that I have the floor, and he delivers this joke that it's like, wait a second, this is just bizarre.
And for
And
what it's
P.S.
worth, the
here's
campaign,
how I'm going to deal with the coronavirus.
Right.
The Bloomberg campaign got actually checked for releasing highly edited videos on Twitter that did make it look like he performed well.
Oh yeah, no, that was the.
And so
that was the one where he said about nobody's developed a business except for me, and then crickets.
Yeah, crickets. I think the only thing that could be a takeaway from that debate, that honestly for me that has any memory, is Joe Biden going after Tom Steyer on prisons.
I think that exchange is going to be interesting because that's really the most. I think that is the one dynamic that I think is going to mean something.
But it might be a risk though, because at the end of the day, as we said earlier, yes, it could help Biden, but Biden had to deliver that and also punch Bernie, because again, just like Nevada and pretty much almost every state moving forward, Bernie is the second choice for all of the next tier candidates.
If you are supporting Tom Steyer, and I have a feeling that support is a little bit vaporware type of stuff. I have a feeling that it's going to go away. The last polls had him around 14, and I suspect that it's not for reals. But if you're supporting Tom Steyer, I think it's because you've seen a ton of ads from him for the past 3 months. And 2.5 of those months, there was nobody else who had any ads on.
Yeah.
And I think that you were voting for him not because, look, I am convinced that there is sort of portions of the electorate that are exclusively looking at who can win. And there are portions of the electorate that are just looking at like, oh, I like that guy for whatever reason. For some of those people, I think, a subset of that is ideology and plans. And I think for others, it's, that person, that man, that woman makes me feel like comfortable. I like them or whatever. They can do the job, whatever it is. And I think Steyer's support must fall in that category.
Yeah, it's weak. It's not.
It can't be they're convinced that I'm going with Steyer because he's going to win. I think it's just like I'm comfortable with him. I've seen him like all these ads. I don't think he hurt himself in this, but I just don't think that the support is that strong. It's going to be. I don't know. I mean,
I think on the margins that might have hurt him, because when you have a guy who, even for people who are actually, like, there was that whole phase a couple of weeks ago where even people who, are pretty on the left and like Bernie were like, oh, look at Tom, he's being all nice to Bernie. That's a funny meme. I think because he does have a certain kind of goofy likability and comes off as extremely non-threatening, that if you're even taking a little bit of time to entertain him as a possibility, and it's like, whoa, where the hell did that private prison thing come from?
Right.
I think that does have a little bit of a
Yeah.
The polls
I would
say
imagine
that it's a wishy-washy. There's a confidence factor in the most recent polling, the last 3 polls, where of course Bernie's base is the most solid base, and the rest of the candidates not so much. But Biden does have more of a confidence factor in South Carolina than all the other candidates except for Bernie.
I'd have to say if anybody help themselves, and maybe this I'm going in with a predisposition, it would have been Biden, but I don't think by much. But everybody else, it's very hard to imagine that people walked away from that debate going like, you know what? I didn't think this before, but now I think that person is the person to beat Trump. Like, who would that person be?
Definitely no.
Bernie is the front runner, so really all he had to do was hold steady, and he did.
I don't know. I think
true.
I think his gun. I'm sorry, guys. I know you're gonna kill me on this.
I'm gonna kill you.
You're gonna kill me on it. I'm sorry. You've been debating this issue for too long. You know that the South Carolina voters, when it comes to gun reform, I understand what you're saying about rural, and I think that's probably his mindset, is that he has to pivot. But it was not a strong enough answer.
No, what he did,
something
that was a
he needs
mistake.
to get better at.
He should have done this. He should have done it the same way he did it with the Barbara Lee thing he did a couple of weeks ago, because it was just so effective. The way he don't he was right on the merits, but he shouldn't have begun with an attack on Joe. He should have just been
he was trying to do that
I
same
get
thing.
what he was
Like,
trying
you've
to do.
made some mistakes.
But the difference was a couple weeks ago when he said he just said, and it's easier because she's literally the only one who cast the right vote.
Right.
But he should just cite somebody like, you know what he should do is he just actually had a really prominent gun activist sign up on his campaign.
Yep.
He should say, I've learned a hell of a lot from being in the trenches and learning from blah, 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 blah.
Support him.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, obviously, but again, that answer wasn't good, but is that like really gonna be like, I just don't see anything that actually happened that's like, whoa, that
is
was
a top
bad.
tier issue in South Carolina, and that's the problem, is that the Democratic base in South Carolina, while we were sitting here, I was like, is this really as important? And of course, it's 85% and up when it comes to a first tier issue for South Carolina.
Wow.
He cleared it enough though,
No.
in terms of, but in a way that's actually gonna damage him. Like,
I don't
in a
think
discernible way.
after this debate, I think he'll I don't know what's going to happen in the polls, but I don't think it helped him. I don't think it necessarily hurt him.
That's my read.
I think Biden will probably squeak in with a win. I don't know I think Steyer's it's plucked.
Biden, Bernie, Steyer. Real
Yeah.
quick, do you guys think that we've reached a critical mass where people like us have always hated Pete Buttigieg? But I noticed in the past couple of days, Joy Reid tweeting at him, being like, "Wow, like I forget how she put it, but basically like trying to like whine your way to a distant second place finish in Nevada and working the refs. What a sign of a powerful grassroots movement." The montages of him plagiarizing Obama really weirdly
I think
that was
are going
insane.
around.
Hurt.
And tonight,
That's great.
Again, it's just like I know I honestly know I've tried.
Tonight was his weirdest debate performance.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to know because
there was this quality of like you'd hear him at the end of every sort of like exchange say something that was almost on point. I get the sense that they had told him to go out there and be a statesman. And he was in the middle of this food fight. It was sort of like at the end of Animal House. I hate to Dennis Miller this and quote a movie that was
like
so
Animal House. Pete Buttigieg is like Jim
There's
Belushi.
a scene at one point where I think like one of the ROTC guys is trying to go like, everyone halt. And just like the whole thing is just crazy around it. You just hear like one little thing where he's trying to say something that is like supposed to sound statesman-like.
Yeah.
And it is completely out of context. It is like almost a non sequitur. It is a complete lack of sort of like situational awareness. It's like, dude, no one's listening to you. And it sounded like he was in a different debate
Well,
that
that's
we
why
kept
We
dipping
thought-
into.
I thought his drops were real.
literally thought
I
that.
thought those were happening. And I've really
Squeak,
tried with
squeak,
Pete the
squeak.
last couple of days because he's definitely just on the personal, visceral level. He's been the one from the beginning. I don't like him. I don't understand why anybody would like him. I don't like any of them besides Bernie,
He's
but
so
Pete
smart.
is definitely my least favorite. But I'm really wondering if that debate, the Obama thing, and the endless, like, I think like going up in Iowa, we don't like it because it's dishonest and ridiculous. But I see how if you're just tuning in, you go, wow, that's a lot of chutzpah to be 37 and go out there and claim your win. But then you try to do the same thing kind of in New Hampshire by over talking. So you like drown Bernie out. Then in Nevada, you get crushed, but then you do a days long of whining. And then these videos come out where you're just like, oh, that kid does remind me of Obama because he's like some type of stalker roommate in a horror movie, like doing this weird
What was
impression
that
of him.
movie?
Like, it's,
Oh my God, that was horrible.
I know what you're talking about.
We should
like
do
the
a
horror.
back-to-back.
That shit. That's like it's the roommate in that movie is Pete Buttigieg with Barack Obama.
But he was plucked by the Obama people, and that's what's even more frustrating to me is you have someone like Liz Smith worked for Barack Obama. Axelrod loves Liz Smith. I mean, Liz also worked for Senator Cuomo or Governor Cuomo and for the IDC,
right?
of course, exactly. She tried to hide that one, but she was fired from De Blasio's campaign. So there's this whole like
Wouldn't it
weird.
be funny if there was a Nigerian account that was just like the IDC are getting things done. They are so effective.
Wow. Maybe that connects some of the dots with de Blasio's epic ponage of Pete this week.
There
But
is
seriously,
only one force
it would-
in Albany that is solving problems. True.
It's David Carlucci.
It looks like.
No, but really.
Wow. What's this?
So the Surfs TV is reporting that apparently it wasn't CBS that took down all the lefty Twitch streams. It was just somebody who was reporting them.
What? Let's fact check this.
We're under attack.
I have a controlling ownership
report.
stake.
It's
we
a
go down
cyber
like that.
attack.
Does Bloomberg own this company?
I bet you it was Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
The Yang Gang.
Andrew was like, I actually
They've been
own
reporting
the
this.
Praxis.
Do you want to hear Bloomberg's joke?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just since I have the floor for a second, that I really am surprised that all of these, my fellow contestants up here, I guess would be the right word for it, even nobody pays attention to the clock. I'm surprised they show up because I would have thought after I did such a good job in beating them last week that they'd be a little bit afraid to do that.
All right. Actually, can we get? I'm sorry.
Guys.
Can we indulge for a second? Is it handy the clip of Bloomberg on The Apprentice saying that he needs to? Okay, where he's like,
I'll be the one who judges
Wait a second.
how to best cut the mustard.
I don't even understand
Same
like his
energy.
whole argument,
Is he
like
trying to be
because of the way that
self-deprecating?
they're approaching the clock. I guess that's the best way to refer to them, contestants. What?
He couldn't say fellow Democrats, so
No,
he had to say
he cut
something.
that out, yeah.
I guess he didn't like. Did they not go through like what that joke was? Like what?
He's overwhelmed. He's not a professional at this. He's not used to being challenged.
Yeah.
He's not used to being challenged. Let's just start from that place. Whether it's by his consultants telling him what to do.
What billionaire is?
memorizing things.
What billionaire is?
You know? He
Tom
says
Steyer
things
might
like,
invite employees for a rap session once a year where he pretends that he can be criticized. He's that type. Like, I just want to hear everybody's feedback. You're fired.
Or he does that thing where he puts on a fake mustache and goes down to the floor.
and
Oh,
everybody's
the
like,
undercover
and
boss.
everybody's
Is
just
it
like,
the
no,
boss?
Tom's really compassionate. He's actually investing in this private prison because he cares about people's rights. All right, thanks, Tom.
But
oh no, I'm sorry.
Don't you want to
Sorry,
say
Bob.
some bad things about the boss? I do. God, what a jerk.
His ties are real ugly.
Yeah. No, he's actually a really nice guy. All right, can we go home, Tom? Bob?
Well, like, can we even diagram Bloomberg's joke just now? Like, what was he trying for?
He was trying to make it like he is
Yeah.
making light of his performance last week so that he appears not to take it seriously, so that the cue is for the audience that if he doesn't think he did that badly, then he didn't do that badly. The problem is
If you're stewing on it halfway through the debate,
if you're stewing on it an hour into the debate, it clearly undercuts the entire message. Like, it's supposed to come off as casual, and instead, he's in the middle of talking about coronavirus and says, wait a second, I forgot. Incidentally,
We're not prepared
Gay ice cream.
We're not
Have you guys
prepared.
heard of gay ice cream?
for a global health pandemic. I'm the only one. But incidentally, totally not upset that I was humiliated last week.
Exactly.
he got a bigger laugh calling them contestants like some kind of
Yes.
weird Martian than his actual punchline.
Donald
I
Trump
liked it
would beat this
earlier.
guy so
Yeah, oh my God.
fucking badly.
But listen, I think the thing is that I think too much of the analysis is always focused on like how are they going to do on a debate stage with Donald Trump? I mean, who knows if he'll actually even show up? He might, but I think that is over. I think on some level it is overestimated the impact of the debates in the context of a general election.
But I mean
think,
systemically.
yes. I mean, the problem is just that it really is about what's going to depress turnout. And
Absolutely.
for Bloomberg, there is just a multitude of different of people.
Anything else I could do to make you people unhappy?
The only thing that isn't going to depress turnout is the money he's
Yeah, I
paying
was
to
going to say,
individuals.
literally, if he has,
Well-
if he comes out tomorrow and he says,
I am going to bribe. We have an electoral path. We know exactly who needs to turn out in the swing states, and I'm going
This
to personally
district.
write them
I mean,
a
honestly-
$10,000 check.
Let's-
that's
Let's
the
be
only
real. That's
plausible
not a
path.
new idea in the Democratic Party. And Hillary Clinton, I'm sorry if you hate me, she did that. She put the money, maybe it wasn't hand in hand, maybe it was a couple of steps removed, but they definitely moved money that way. This is the Democratic strategy, except it's worse with Bloomberg. I mean, when he was like, we need to lean into conservatives and we need to win over the moderate Republicans. How are we going to win the race? How did that work in 2016? Like, can we just That's what
Chuck
Bernie needs to
Schumer.
talk
Right.
about.
I mean,
Chuck
Bernie
Schumer.
needs to focus on that. None of you people on stage have a better strategy than 2016, and we do, and we're turning out new
And
people.
incidentally, it's
Well,
slightly-
Exposed.
I mean, the
and
only
I won conservatives and moderates in Nevada, and maybe what you
Right.
mean by conservative and moderate is another product of being in a delusional bubble.
the only, we were talking about this today on the show. The only thing that is problematic about that theory is that we don't know yet if they're turning out new people, and we really can't tell.
The numbers are starting in Nevada, right?
Well, I heard that on the show today.
Well, the general is so different from the primary.
No,
Well,
but-
that
but-
I know.
But we know registration, and that's important. We do know new voters. What happens is right now, I mean, we talked about this last time, Bernie is still struggling with people that he got last time, and he's not getting this time, and he is bringing in younger voters that are newly registered. So there are new classified, whether it's DACA recipients, young people, some immigrants. Obviously, it's very early on. Like, we do have a sense of registration, and that is undeniably coming from the Bernie Sanders side.
And
Okay.
also,
And so-
do you think it's going to make an impact that there are over 300,000 Puerto Rican refugees who've recently relocated to Florida?
And I'll get into. I don't want to even get into this whole.
Do you
Puerto
think
Rican
though?
aspect.
And also,
It's
but
a-
also, let's just make it
conservative
even.
and wealthy.
But,
Let's
but
just
we
make it
do
more
also,
narrow.
let me just finish that point though,
conservative
was that one, I don't think we know yet. It's possible. There are theories I think you can find, but 2008 numbers, there were more new voters that came in 2008, I guess, in Iowa than it was in this year, whatever. I'm not saying that we know that he's not. I'm
Right.
just saying that we don't know yet that he is.
Right.
And maybe we'll have a better sense of that after Super Tuesday. And I Jimmy has a point. The primary is not necessarily indicative of what's going to happen in the general, because you can. I can certainly construct a theory, and I've said this many times, that there could be a large portion of the Democratic electorate that is just saying, like, you guys decide. I'll be there
Right.
on the general.
there's also
general
the
'cause I
more
want to go to
conservative
Trump.
point,
But
too.
the polling also shows that Bernie is performing the worst of the field with suburban women, which is a reality and which was really the driver in many respects of the 2018 numbers.
Yeah.
Now,
2018, right,
terms.
in terms of bigger, yeah.
yeah, and so
Also
but-
was blamed in
but
2016.
We also don't know, like, I contend that those people came out not because they had such a great congressional candidate, but they came out because they wanted to rebuke Donald Trump.
And I just wanted to say really a couple of points. One is that, there is a more conservative argument in the sense of I do think Bernie will bring some new people into the process in the general. I'm pretty confident about that at this point. I'm not saying like some grand earth-shattering thing, but I think there'll be some new people in play if he's the nominee. But then there's also just a more narrow point that it's like, okay, just churning out traditional Democratic voters. Mike Bloomberg's not going to do it. Bernie probably will do it. And what is totally missing in this field, like if Joe Biden was the Joe Biden of 2016, this
Right.
would be a totally different race, because you would have somebody who they could consistently say, this guy's popular, he can appeal across different groups, and he knows how to handle himself. That candidate doesn't exist. So so the last thing I'll say too is, I think the suburban outreach, like I've got my picks for VP. I really genuinely really like Nina Turner, and I think there's actually a lot of valid arguments for her. I think on the other hand, going totally boring, I think Tammy Baldwin should be at the top of the list, the senator from Wisconsin.
I think it overlaps with Bernie's base.
And I think but Wisconsin is so important. And I also think
Bernie doesn't have a problem with Wisconsin. That was a Hillary problem.
well, he's
Bernie-
trailing Trump.
I mean,
in
I think
Quinnipiac polls,
Tammy
but
Baldwin has
He won't
got to
be
be on the
once he's
list.
the
nominee.
I
But I just have
personally,
to say-
if we're going to do this, I would say Ayanna Pressley is probably fairly high
What does
on
she
the
do in
What?
terms of geography?
She
She's from
angers-
like suburban
geography.
Massachusetts.
All the political science says that geography is irrelevant.
Geography's
you
relevant,
literally
but
need to
nothing
win.
about Barbara Lee.
Yeah, Barbara
It's
Lee.
the only person who
Barbara Lee's a good call.
fundamentally has
Yeah.
every person on stage, and frankly, every Democrat and Republican, obviously, is pro-Trump military budget,
Right.
including members of the squad.
Right. No, Barbara
That
Lee would
is
be
something
great.
that is a red
But
line
and
there.
I also just would say, and whatever. I mean, you don't count on anything from
Barbara Lee
Why
is
is Ayanna Pressley
73
74 years old? Who
years
cares?
old. There is absolutely, it would be.
But you can't criticize Barbara Lee.
I don't need to criticize
Try as
Barbara
a wine
Lee.
mom
He's
to
doing it right now.
criticize
I don't
Barbara
need to
Lee
criticize
for her
Barbara
age.
Lee. I can just say that the idea that you're going to put a 74-year-old person behind a 78-year-old person is absurd.
I'm not picking. I'm not going with. Let me just
Definitely
say,
don't think it's Ayanna Presley.
It's definitely not Ayanna Presley. I agree with that completely. But besides that, for a variety
like
of
her,
reasons,
for a lot of
but
reasons, yeah.
regardless,
What are the reasons?
Regardless, no, really quick.
She's
all
in her
these
first term right
never
now.
Trump.
Right?
Yeah, let's start for tomorrow. All
I'm
these
not on tomorrow, guys.
And
Come
I
on.
don't care. I just vote no. But all of these never Trump people, and most of them are obviously disingenuous. It shocked me. Joe Walsh, of all people, is proving to be the most honest never Trumper. He's tweeting out like, look, free college fantasy is better than authoritarianism. I will vote for Bernie.
I don't know what happened
and so I don't know what happened to that guy. I don't know what Donald Trump did to his girlfriend or whatever. But like the point being, though, is that the job and the test very specifically, and as much as I don't like her, and she cannot be the pick for a variety of reasons too, but Gillibrand coming out and starting to say Bernie can win. No, that's important because you're going to need to deploy
there was a piece-
whole bunch of
There was
suburban, people who talk totally
That helps.
specifically to those demographics. But on the other hand, tell Mike Bloomberg and Tom Steyer, shut up and register every single Hispanic voter in Arizona and fund voting rights drives across the country. That's the only way you can help if you're remotely serious. Because I think that's the other big part of it is like, I think Bernie can actually win the Sun Belt and you just got to register and get people out.
So what about how he's doing with white rural voters this time around? Because I've seen some of the stats and he's not doing as well as he did in 2016 when a lot of people were just voting against Hillary because they hated her.
Yeah.
This
But some of that
campaign's
is
too
because
woke.
When I was in
It's not even just that.
New Hampshire
It's split.
talking to
Bidenism.
undecided voters, some of them, more than one, cared about gun rights. Like, do we think that this could be an issue on which Bernie will benefit from being perceived as more of a moderate
Yes.
in the general election?
Well, in the
Yes.
general election, Trump's going to go all in with guns and Bernie will lose every argument with that. But I think in terms of losing, just like Bernie's turnout was lower in New Hampshire and Iowa than it was in 2016, it's also because there's more people in the race. I mean, I think undeniably Bernie would probably have more of the older white voters that we probably think would side with him. For instance, Crystal Ball and I were both pro-Biden advocates in 2015 because we thought he was the best candidate against Hillary Clinton, right? And then we moved to Bernie. There are people who still are in that camp that Biden is still the best person to defeat the Republicans, and second choice would go to Bernie. I think at the end of the day, when you start when Bernie seizes the nomination, which I think is undeniable once we get past Super Tuesday, those folks are going to come back into his category. Those are people who turn out no matter what. If they didn't vote for Trump, they're definitely voting for a
He's
Democrat.
got to start talking also just frankly about those issues. Like he's got really good plans and he has a lot of credibility and he should just be talking about them more.
Like what issues?
Like he has a really great ag bill. He has
yeah.
a really smart, look, some of those
Rural
things
hospitals.
matter. And one of the rural hospitals, and one of the stats that disturbed me about Iowa was that for all of the great organizing that, Pete really out-organized him tremendously in rural areas. And, maybe there's an argument in general
wealthier.
election to not true, but there's no need to cede that. He's got that's an area where he can easily say when he's, as an example, debunking the nonsense about him not being effective. Actually, I've been, part of the reason I win all the time in a rural.
Well, in the general election,
state.
it's not going to be about his effectiveness.
But I think that's the
But it's
closer
about
we
signifying appeal to
if
different.
he starts claiming that he is the nominee, and I'm saying this from my assessment as somebody who is aware of the primary process. I'm not speaking on behalf of everybody else, but I think he's pretty much the nominee after Super Tuesday, right? He's got to flip to owning the nomination. He should have been up on that stage, and this is why I don't think it was his best performance. That he should have acted like, I'm the nominee. Why are you all in the race? Do you all want Trump? Mayor Bloomberg, if you want to stop Trump so bad, then why are you in this race? Tom Steyer, whatever. You've been buying ads. Why are you in this race? None of you can get to 1991. You're just here to divide the party. And if you believe in Medicare for all, Elizabeth Warren, then I would advocate for you to join us. Join us in this movement. Join us on the ticket. I don't care. Whatever he wants to say on stage. And moving forward, we should only be, the sooner we close this nomination process out, he can focus on rural voters because they're not going to matter right now for the Democratic primary because you have a bunch of big states moving forward. And then he can focus on rural voters
Texas, Cali to some extent. But
Texas, there's big cities. Let's be real. Texas, he's going to win Texas by the big cities.
Let's be fake.
Well, I mean, we all want to talk about the rural votes, but it depends on when, rural vote mattered in Iowa. It doesn't matter when you're going into Super Tuesday.
When you do that, it's like you're signifying, like, I guess what I'm saying is I think when he talks about those rural issues, that's part of doing what you're talking about.
He's setting up
which
his
is
electability.
consolidating, look, we're going to go into the national campaign now. They can keep wasting time. I'm going to start talking about a broader issue set and start to really make the case against Donald Trump. That is how he's going to solidify the fact that he's going to be the nominee.
But he has to first act like the nominee. And
I think that's part of it.
I really think that this the movement has Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
They've had it for 5 years. You are
right.
going to be the nominee. Act like it.
Right.
Yeah, well,
Stop
he's
acting
not
like losers.
used to winning.
None of us are.
Well, I think that is actually,
That's
I think
a problem.
that's the next big challenge.
It's
is
going to
when-
be
when
like a tear in
insurgents-
reality if and when he does.
I think he's
it also is
starting
going to
to.
require,
His
I think,
swag's
like
pretty-
the entire operation to change its attitude from insurgency to having the power at that point. Because once he is the nominee, he does have an incredible amount of power in the context of the Democratic Party. And the attitude of like, then the question becomes like, where are, I can't remember who it was today, but like there was a tweet about Beto that I saw about in
miss him.
Texas. And it was somebody, it was a writer who was just, I don't know, there was maybe a video of Bernie saying like, we're going to win in Texas. And somebody wrote, it's just a tweet, but the actual tweet itself is less relevant than the what I'm using to illustrate is that crapping on Beto at this point, like, why? Yeah. Like let's instead of like sort of now, you're out at the front, you've got the leadership and the power of the party. Instead of like looking back and doing, attacking your own rear guard, look forward for who you're fighting.
Yeah, let him go back to being an indie rock slacker in peace.
Well, no, actually, let him go back. I mean, granted, he's going around
endorse
Bloomberg,
Bernie.
but let him go and try and build something in Texas
Right.
No, this
that
is
actually is
all-
going to help Bernie in some
I
fashion.
mean,
No,
De
he's
Blasio
growing a
was the
real,
big. De Blasio
vacation
was
beard.
the first test of this, and it's like the interpretation should be, we're winning because De Blasio would not be doing this, even though he's got all of these.
No.
Well,
He went on a boat shirtless with Bernie 2 years ago. Let's not forget. They went
he
to
still
Vermont,
chose to
rowboated
run.
together.
He still chose to not endorse him till the very last minute. This isn't like a out of the gate endorser by any stretch.
De Blasio
And he
is
ins-
not
but
the most progressive guy.
Regardless, I'm just saying, like the response to De Blasio was not to say fuck you and
Yeah.
issue the litany of all the terrible things he's done, which is all true. I agree with, but he's not running for office. The right response was awesome. Now please go rip apart Mike Bloomberg.
It's a very
Thanks.
encouraging sign that fractions of the establishment are lining up behind Bernie now because they could see the writing on the wall.
Right.
And maybe they don't have very strong ideological commitments, which is good in this case because they just want to pick a winner.
Well, and here's, so Fox News, I we've talked about this. I do a lot of Fox News, and today was an awakening moment for me because this was the first time I heard their new line of attacks on Bernie. They've had the same line of attacks for years, and they came out with their guns, their Wall Street CEOs, and I felt I didn't do as great. Like I really was unprepared, and part of that.
What was the nature of their text? I heard something that Limbaugh did the other day that fascinated me.
They went into specific policies about student loans that I had responses, but I was outnumbered and I didn't have facts and figures. I didn't have talking points. Not that I come in with talking points, but I just haven't had to respond to these attacks yet. I've responded to Venezuela. I've responded to Cuba. I've responded to authoritarianism. I haven't responded to the fact that, last year, for instance, income inequality went down a little bit. Of course, we all understand. I didn't have facts and
that's
figures.
going to be a potent talking point.
No,
right
it's not.
there.
But when you add it to a litany of responses with CEOs talking about how they have been able to, it was Andy Putzer, so of course he was the former CEO of Hardee's, but you're outnumbered, and we just aren't prepared with those talking points.
That's a specific franchise.
I think that type of stuff is going to be.
I think the guns. I think the guns is going to be the
It's
thing.
gonna
I
be
think the other stuff is more minimal.
I think it's going to be a hard sell for them. I'm talking in terms of the general. The one thing that I heard Limbaugh say the other day, which I thought was fascinating, and he didn't dwell on it very much, was he started to say that he was talking about Bernie's house, which I think is from their perspective is, this is the functional equivalent of Al Gore has a private plane.
Yeah.
And I think the idea is, for Trump anyways, one of the things that Limbaugh said was that the Clintons helped him buy that house. And then he just sort of, and I was just like, what?
That is amazing.
And he went past it, and I listened more. He didn't bring it up again. And I wonder, like, they're testing this stuff, but I think the idea is that they feel, and it would be logical for them to do at least one part of their attack be to attempt to undercut Bernie in that way.
Bernie has integrity,
He is a fraud.
and Bernie's
No, they
independent, and they're going to go after him if they can associate him with the rot of the Democratic.
And he's a fraud.
I'll give you
Totally.
what they did. They
Yeah,
said that
yeah.
they said obviously they went through. He made $1 million. He's in the top income bracket. I said sure. He sold a book. Whatever. Well, isn't that great? Isn't that what capitalism is? I said fine. Whatever your argument is. But then they said that he is investing in mutual funds, and that I've never heard before.
I think the thing they're going to try and do, because remember, again, it's about depressing the Democratic vote. I think is their primary thing, right? Because they feel like for Trump is going to consolidate, and he's just about consolidated the Republican Party, more or less. And he was always, I think, going to do it to 95%. Why wouldn't he at this point? I mean, coronavirus, I think, could change that calculation when people start to go like, hey, wait a second, maybe it makes a difference. Maybe you could peel off 5% of the Republicans if they go like, well, wait a second, he's not very good at this. And this could be an actual threat.
It's going to work for Republicans.
About that?
I mean, look, if there is a concern that your kids can't go to school because you got to wear masks, there's a list of 150 drugs that cannot be imported into this country because of the coronavirus. What the government is supposed to deal.
To think that that's true, but I don't.
There was a story today by Axios.
No. Of what? Of
150.
No. I agree. Of course, on the substance. I'm talking about Republicans voting against him over it.
Oh, I think that there's a lot of hay to be made from like he can't even handle this. Like one of the things that but where has been the proof of his incompetence? There has not been something that has actually really challenged his lack of competence that you can see.
Part of it is we don't have a universal
message.
message. The Democrats have not had a universal message.
Well, I understand.
Even if we do get hit by coronavirus, his base is going to believe whatever he says about it.
I'm not talking about the base. We're talking about 4 or 5%, of Republican voters. And, if these are the type of issues, I think, like sheer competence are issues that can be exploited. But putting that aside, I think the
Bernie should
strategy.
attack Limbaugh personally. She's like, are we going to believe a drug addict?
Well,
who goes to the Dominican Republic?
But the way that this
with
works
condoms?
is
I don't
Limbaugh
think so.
is the
That's
one who
He's dying, by the
doesn't
way.
like
Limbaugh is the one who
Medicare
does
here, but he
these
goes
test
to
balloons.
Dominican Republic.
That is what Limbaugh's function is in this.
I want to give people health care.
And in the test balloon for the
tourism.
Democratic Party is Fox News, because immediately after Fox News issued those talking points, I heard it on MSNBC, and I heard it with the Democrats all over Twitter. So it's not a conspiracy theory, but there are industries who are issuing these talking points to both sides. They're putting it through Politico, and we have to be honest with ourselves. We can't just live in the lefty ecosystem, as much as I love it, to defeat the centrists in this race who likely will either stay out of the race or go to Donald Trump. And that is the 5%. That's the one thing that Bloomberg has right here. It doesn't mean that Bernie can't win that voter base, for his side. It just means that Bernie has to start speaking to them.
Well, Bloomberg can definitely win that. The problem is he does it at the expense of another 10 or 15% on his left flank.
Exactly.
And that's the real problem. The problem isn't that I believe Bloomberg can get some of, David Frum et al. To vote for him.
Lloyd Blankfein in Westchester will turn out from
But the problem is that he loses it on the other side. All right.
I'd say one thing I liked about this debate, to end on a positive note. I thought a lot more of it was going to be about the behavior of Bernie supporters online, and none of it was.
That's true.
Might be another harvest of that hate.
Keep posting. Welcome to my online harassment seminar. Don't hesitate to comment on people's physical appearances.
We've hacked it.
All right, folks. We will be back live tomorrow at noon. We will talk more about the debate and other news. There's a slight chance.
I hope you die.
Have
Is not you will die.
Dave.
This is a style guy.
Wait, buy tickets to our LA show.
Oh yeah, plug that
Guys,
show.
bit.ly/LA Super Twos, capital S, capital T. I've tweeted it out, but we're gonna be there.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. Check out TMBS on YouTube. Great show last night with Benjamin Dixon and Richard Wolff.
That's good. I saw.
Yeah, he's great. And come see us April 3rd in Austin with Abby Martin and Anna Kasparian. We're over halfway sold out, so I'd get those quickly. Tomorrow for patrons, we're announcing details for our Boston live show in June. Oh, sorry. And then Sunday, I'm doing a podcast with Daniel Denver and Brianna Joy in Boston, and then we're going to canvass for Bernie because we are going to bench a certain senator on Super Tuesday.
You're doing
You're
that
not
Sunday?
speaking on behalf of the campaign, I hope.
I'm not speaking on behalf of the campaign. I'm speaking on behalf of me. All of my mean language about, campaigning against another candidate. But Warren Spurs are really reminding me of Republicans in the Obama era. It's just like, well, Obama doesn't attack us, but he hasn't resigned yet. So I literally saw a Warren Spur on Twitter today complaining that Bernie was campaigning in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, how dare he try to campaign and get votes
Sad
that way?
Krasensteins.
That's
Sorry,
cheating.
I apologize.
I only know
I'm
3
campaigning.
people supporting Warren at this point.
Well, they're all
See
online.
you tomorrow.
2 of them are brothers.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there.